While we're on the subject of authentication, let's take a moment to discuss password resets. First, we'll begin with the workflow. So imagine a user wants to sign in, but they've forgotten their password. First, they'd click a Forgot Password link. Next, they'd see a form to provide their email address. Once that form submits, we'd then prepare a unique token and then attach that to the user's account in the database. Next, we'd fire off an email to the user. And as part of that email, we'd include a link back to your website that would contain the unique token. And this is how we confirm that the person who requested the reset is also the person who owns that email address. Finally, once the user clicks on that link, they're sent back to our site. Our server then verifies the token in that link. And if everything checks out, the user can fill out the form to set a new password. And yeah, if you were doing this from scratch, this is the basic workflow, the basic feature you would implement. But let's have a look. Let's go back, and if I log in, we already have a Forgot Password link. So that takes care of the first step. Click Forgot Password, fill out a form with your email address. Now, I'll provide our email address, but I think it's going to fail when we click this. And it does. So notice it's related to the SMTP transport. And that's because, again, it's trying to fire off an email, but because we have a fresh install of Laravel, we haven't even configured that. Let's go to our .env file. And if I scroll down, here are the default settings for mail. And of course, you can go into the specifics in your config/mail file. And this is where all of these environment variables will be referenced. Okay, so notice we have multiple drivers here. SMTP, we could go through Mailgun, we could simply log it to a file, we could go through Postmark. And what's nice about this is you can update the driver, but still use the exact same interface to send the email. So you'll see in our case, it's defaulting to SMTP, and it's using a service called Mailtrap, which is really neat. It allows you to test email in as real-world a scenario as possible, but ultimately, you're not really sending the email. All of the emails are being sent to this test server. So I'll show you that in a future episode, but for now, let's simply stick to the log driver. This means whenever you fire off an email, we will simply log it to a file right here. All right, so we're going to go back and try it again, but real quick, if I go to password resets, it did create that new record, but then the email failed. So I'm going to delete that so we can start from scratch. All right, one more time. There we go. It has been emailed. So if I come back to PHP Storm in the log file, if I scroll down, here we go. Hello, you're receiving this email because we received a password reset. Here's the link. All right, so I'm going to select that whole thing there, and I want you to notice the endpoint. /password/reset/ a unique token, and then the email address as well. Okay, so take a look at this. If I go back to Table Plus and I refresh this password resets table, you'll notice we have a token here. And it doesn't quite match up, right? 4795 does not match up with this. And that's because this is the hashed version of the token. And behind the scenes, Laravel will correctly check that. Okay, so let's see. Let's go back to our scratch. We've now submitted that form. Laravel prepared a unique token. It associated it with the user's account. And again, remember, we have a reference to the user's email address there. All right. Next, send the email with that unique link. And that's now been done. All of this you get for free, by the way. So there's our email. And notice it does expire in 60 minutes. So what's the next step? The link in that email goes back to our website. The website confirms the token and then shows a form to set a new password. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to paste in that link. But real quick, notice it is set to localhost, and that's because I haven't set our site. I'll show you that in a moment. For now, let's go to Laravel 6.test and run it. All right, there we go. So again, notice when we visit this page, it does include the token. So for example, if I provided something that doesn't exist, I'll still see the page, but if I set a new password here, it's not going to work, and that's because the token is invalid. Okay, let's try it one more time. I'll go back to the correct token, try it again, and there we go. We have updated the password. So now, if you go back to Table Plus, this password reset should now be deleted because we don't need it anymore. And our user has now been updated with this new password. So if I were to sign out and log in again, if I provide the new password, it works. So Laravel allowed us to knock out that entire workflow in a matter of seconds. Now, if you want some bonus credit, if you're anything like me, you like to know what's going on behind the scenes. So take a look. Go to your controllers. Here's your auth directory. And here we go. There's a forgot password controller. So let's work through this very quickly. I'll start by figuring out where the correct endpoint is. So if we run our route list, if the user needs to reset their email, they will visit this endpoint that will load a forgot password controller and an action called show link request form. All right, forgot password controller. This has a trait, and there's the show link request form. So here is the view where the user fills out their email to request a password reset. Now you'll see here, this form submits a post request to the route called password.email. So let's go back. Here is the name of the routes. So we want password.email, and it does respond to a post request. Okay, so that will hit forgot password controller and an action of send reset link email. Okay, scroll down, and here we validate the user's email address using request validate. You've already learned that. Next, Laravel uses this concept of a password broker, and it calls send reset link and provides the user's credentials. The credentials is simply the email address in this case. All right, let's go back up. Send reset link, if we take a look at this on the password broker class, will fetch the user. We check if the user has recently requested a reset. We can skip that. But then here is where the notification is actually fired off. And notice it's calling this send password reset notification directly on the user model. All right, let's take a look at that together. Out of the box, your user model uses this notifiable trait, and it also extends this authenticatable class. Now, if we take a look at that, you'll see there's a trait called can reset password. And here we go, send password reset notification. So in the password broker, this is the method we are calling. And all that does is notify the user, and it sends through a notification class. And again, I'm going to teach you all about this when we discuss mail and notifications. But if we take a look at that notification very quickly, think of this as the blueprint for an email. It's kind of neat. So we set up a message, we set the subject of the email, we add a line, we add an action like a button, and then a couple more lines. So the key thing here is we are adding a button to reset the password, and we're sending through the URL back to our website. And that's it. So you can kind of see what's going on there. They fill out the form, we set up a token, we fire off an email, and then once the user clicks on that email, they can then move on to actually resetting the password. So that's where reset password controller comes into play, where again, we show a view to reset the password, and then here's where we finally finish up. So I know this can get complicated pretty quickly, and I don't expect you to understand all of it. I just want you to come along for the ride. We validate the request. We once again use the password broker to reset the email. But as part of that, we pass through this closure that actually updates the user. So you can see we set the user's password, we set a token, we persist, we fire off an event, and then we log in the user. And that's basically it. And the best part is, you don't really need to know any of that. Because Laravel offers this out of the box, it just works.